Hi guys, it's Emma here, and today I'm doing a rewatch of Twin Peaks. I'm on to episode 22 of season 2, and this episode was directed by Diane Keaton, and it was also written by Harley Peyton and Robert Engels. And this episode, by the way, has the title Slaves and Masters, and it's the 15th episode, I think, of season 2. Now, before this episode starts, I should say that I've seen a lot of comments by other fans kind of dissing this episode. I don't think it's that bad from memory. So yeah, I'm gonna have a look, see what it's like. And excuse me if I eat a biscuit. Okay, so I actually like that opening with the giant chessboard and feeling as if you're some kind of tiny element that's whizzing around it. I think combined with that eerie music, it's very effective. It's kind of like being inside the mind of Windom Earle a little bit. I think it's very dramatic and ominous and symbolic as well. This cop that's a bit like Andy, who isn't very bright. Maybe that's just a throwaway joke. I mean, obviously he's reminiscent of Andy, and we have this thing where the cops troop out in this, it's like a dance almost, a choreographed dance. It's very odd, kind of amusing. Maybe it gives you the idea that, you know, all law enforcement have the same structured mindset that they have to, well, they're obliged to commit to, and they've all been sort of, what's the word? Not brainwashed, but conditioned to think like a machine, like part of a whole instead of an individual within the force. Maybe that's thinking too deeply about it. Maybe it's just silliness for the sake of silliness. I find it interesting that the episode starts with Evelyn continuing to set up James. I don't think Evelyn is the most sympathetic character or the most interesting character either. We already knew that she was doing this to James. I don't think anything in this scene is really progressing that plotline at all. So again, at the bar we have these sailors, similar to the cops. They're doing the same thing, acting the same way, dressed exactly the same, and they are listening to classical music. I don't know if that is supposed to be like an incongruent thing. And it's kind of funny that James and Donna are trying to, you know, they haven't gone far in trying to escape this situation. They're just hiding out in hideout wallies. Okay, and this guy at the bar this bartender who keeps bothering Donna, it feels very like small town interference. And the sailors, they even speak in unison. I mean, it obviously is very, very stylized, that staging of the scene. In the past, I think that there has been, you know, weirdness and strangeness and a lot of art in the scenes, and this feels like it's a little bit like painting by numbers. So it seems too stylized and a little bit as if they're trying to copy the weirdness of the show that has gone before, but it comes across as a paler imitation. Okay, so I like this scene with Bobby and Shelley at the sheriff's station. Bobby, he's still like, he is still very childish when he is challenged, even though I think his relationship with Shelley seems to be making him into a more responsible type of person, and you know, he's been pretty open about the relationship now and stepping up and trying to say that he would protect her and everything. But as soon as Sheriff Truman talks to him like a boy, he responds like a jackass, basically. So Windom Earle looks like some kind of 1930s safari explorer in this picture that Albert produces. Very odd and kind of looks like it's been deliberately stylized to look old-fashioned, so that he has this grace about him that perhaps a modern day photo wouldn't. Okay, so Windom Earle, the last time we saw him he was in a pretty nice suit, and now he's in these cowboy style what is that, long johns? I don't know what you call those. He treats Leo with complete cruelty and contempt. Appears to be having a lot of fun with that. Okay, so this is a very tender scene between Norma and Ed. It's very nice writing this about, you know, how the past 20 years have been. Loving each other and yet being apart. Of course, Nadine shows up, and when she does, there's a undertone of a threat towards Norma, I guess, because Nadine, she talks about how she hurt Hank because she was mad at him for seeming as if he was going to hurt Ed. So it's like there is that undertone of, you know, I love this man that's between us right now, and if anyone tries to hurt him, I hurt them. So it's uncomfortable on many levels. And also it does feel like she throws in that information about her being with Mike at the end to try and make Ed a little jealous. And his reaction, it's either of what the hell, jealousy, or it's concern. Either way, she's got his attention, and clearly she is still subconsciously very affected by Norma and Ed's relationship, because she bends her trophy. She can't verbalize how she feels. She maybe doesn't even know consciously how she feels, but her physical reaction says it all. Okay, so we have Audrey. Basically, she's completely in charge now. She's called her Uncle Jerry, but once he's got there, once he's arrived at the Great Northern, she takes the opportunity to tell him that she is basically the boss, as long as her father's incapacitated. Okay, so I think Audrey, I think this is helping her to grow as a person, this experience with her father, and she certainly isn't willing to throw him under a bus to get ahead in life. She isn't power crazy, but she understands the nature of power and being in positions of power. And I like the fact that she's a woman in a man's world in this situation, and she's handling it so well. Okay, so James confronts Evelyn, and I think he finds out from Evelyn's response to his question of why she did it to him, why she framed him. I think he discovers a lot about human nature and how complicated people can really be. She gives 3 reasons for doing what she did: out of fear because she wanted to, and for the money. James is such a good person that I think coming across someone like James is such a good person that when he meets someone like Evelyn, I think it must be pretty much a shock to the system to find out that there is such people in the world willing to go to such lengths to further their own cause, to please themselves without care for anybody else, because that's so not who James is. The Horne family, along with Dr. Jacoby and Bobby, they stage this complex scene where they all pretend to be living in Ben's world. At some point he seems to be overloaded with information and the sensory experience of it, and he comes round and he's sane again. Whoa! I don't know what to say about that. It's a very odd scene. It's a very odd storyline in general, I think. It's not completely funny all of the time, just very odd. And it changes the way that Ben Horne's character is perceived, and how, you know, it's such a change from the first season Ben Horne to see him like this, and it almost completely rewrites who he is, and how we're supposed to feel about him as an audience. Oh, fuck. Okay, poor Leo is like one of Pavlov's dogs. He is being conditioned to think that Windom Earle is a good master, even though he is subjecting him to this horrendous cruelty. And it is harrowing to watch. Again, it's a very huge turnaround in the character of Leo, how it was last season, and now it's almost at the point where I feel a bit sorry for him because of the cruelty he's enduring at the hands of Windom Earle. It is pretty nasty, and it's prolonged. The prolonged nature of it is pretty tough to swallow. That moment when he questions who Windom Earle is, and he like says Windom Earle. Windom says, yes, I'm Windom, as if he is some kind of renowned hero character or anti-hero, as if the name itself, Windom Earle, should strike fear in everyone who hears it, you know. Okay, so that scene with Evelyn shooting Malcolm kind of gets the Bob treatment on that, when it's slowed down and we hear this horrible grunting sound in slow motion. That's kind of like reminiscent of the Madeline and Bob scene, and I'm not sure it's really necessary in this. You know, it doesn't have the same power obviously as the Bob scene. I think Evelyn's response to killing Malcolm is a typical human response to having done something that might endanger you. It's like a survival mode instinct. As soon as he is clearly dead, she goes into this monologue of saying how she's going to set him up and how she's going to blame him for the murder, and how she is constructing the story about why she shot him. I don't necessarily think that is an attribute of a bad person. I think it's a natural instinct to do that. Okay, so Windom Earle passes Cooper in the Great Northern, and Cooper is completely oblivious, and it does feel like this show at this point has really gone down into strong... I mean, it's nothing but it's a very comedic. It's, you know, we have this supposedly dark villain, but even the villain is getting like amusing moments like this. Okay, so at the end scene we see Cooper find the mask of Caroline but in his bed. It's a very creepy looking thing, and it's quite a nice moment, I think. We hear Windom speak directly to Dale, and it's about Caroline, so I think it's interesting to hear Windom talk to Dale like this, and you get a sense of what their relationship might have been, and the drama around Caroline, how that might have played out in the past. And I do like the fact that Cooper holds up Caroline's mask like this. It's like the mask is being used as a veil through which Windom and Dale are connected. we're seeing from behind the mask as if we're experiencing what Windom is feeling and thinking, and Dale's on the other side of that, and we see his eyes looking frightened through the holes of the mask. And Caroline's identity, represented by the mask here, is still linking these two men together, basically. What do I think of this episode? Okay, as I said earlier, I have read a lot of reviews of this episode and comments on fan forums and things, saying that perhaps they weren't as keen on this episode, and mentioning that Diane Keaton was not the best director. I don't necessarily think that myself. I do think that a lot of the scenes in this episode look hyper managed, if you like. They are very, it's as if the director is very aware of how things look, and not just the main players, but everyone in the scene, and how everything in the background is happening. We see a lot of that throughout the episode with odd things going on in background scenes a lot. Is it effective, and is it necessary? It does feel like someone's attempt to be kind of quirky and amusing and odd, rather than it arising from any natural source of inspiration. But I do think at the same time, some of these scenes, if they didn't have that stuff, they would be a bit boring because of where the storylines are at. Some of the storylines, they're just right in the middle at the moment, so I think that it actually helps in a way to bring scenes to life and to make them more interesting. I'd have to say at this stage I'm kind of through with Evelyn. Midway through the episode, the stuff about Josie was addressed with Coop, and then it was completely dropped, which was kind of odd. Overall, I think this episode feels just a little bit frivolous, if you like. Trying to compare it with earlier episodes of Twin Peaks is just not possible, because at this stage it seems like a different show. It does. We have the same characters, but they're different, and we have storylines that started long ago. The meaning of them has changed, and how they are presented to us and how we are expected to feel about such situations has changed. I do have to say that in terms of this episode, I find some of the scenes in it very memorable. When I'm thinking back about Twin Peaks, or you know, when I'm thinking about the show in general, about certain scenes, a lot of scenes from this episode stand out to me in terms of how they're styled, such as that scene with the sailors in the bar, and such as that scene with the chessboard at the beginning. Thank you for watching today. If you have any comments about what you think of this episode, I know that a lot of people do have opinions about this one. Please leave a comment in the section below, and you can also subscribe if you want to keep up to date with any of the rewatches I'm doing, as well as my news videos and more. And that's it. Goodbye.